A CBC News investigation into the COVID-19 outbreaks among migrant farm workers in southwestern Ontario. Now, as we heard earlier this hour, farms and greenhouses in the Leamington, Ontario area remain hotspots for the virus. Nearly 1,000 migrant farm workers have tested positive for COVID-19, and sadly, 3 have died of the disease. One of the men who died was an undocumented worker from Mexico. And as our CBC News investigation found, as many as 2,000 undocumented workers are on farms in that part of Ontario. And they are especially vulnerable because of their undocumented status, as it means they are fearful of being tested for the virus. Well, for more, we're now reaching out to Santiago Escobar. He is a national representative with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union and a coordinator at Agricultural Workers Alliance. Santiago, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Michael. Thank you for having me here.
You know, I think many Canadians would be surprised at the number of undocumented workers who are actually involved in this country's agri-food industry. Just how many undocumented workers are we talking about, and how do they even make their way into the industry?
So in Leamington, as you just said, probably about 2,000 undocumented migrant farm workers. And for almost 3 decades, UFCW has been warning all the injustices that migrant farm workers face while working in Canada. And the time is now to implement meaningful changes where all stakeholders work together to protect the well-being of workers, maintain productivity, and help secure Canada's food supply. We strongly believe that every worker deserves to be treated with dignity and respect at work, no matter where they come from or their status. And we have witnessed that unscrupulous employers and temporary work agencies are taking advantage of vulnerable workers in rural areas and also in the GTA. And I think it's important to highlight the fact that many of these vulnerable workers in Leamington at some point had work permits and arriving in Canada under the Temporary Foreign Workers Program. As they had to leave an abusive employer, they end up losing their work status. Most of these workers incur in debt to be able to come to work in Canada. In many cases, this debt is with loan sharks. Therefore, they fear repercussions back home if they don't pay back. So what options do they have than continue working?
Well,
and others,
let me jump in though. Let me jump in then, because you say that they're also being victimized by unscrupulous agencies and employers. Explain to us who these agencies are, who these employers are that are actually taking advantage of these undocumented workers, and how they actually do that.
Yeah, we have learned that these temporary work agencies take half of their wages and coerce workers to perform unsafe work. Further, they transport workers in overcrowded conditions, and also they're living in housing, in overcrowded housing conditions. And these temporary work agencies are facilitating the exploitation of these vulnerable workers. This is why these temporary work agencies should be highly regulated. At this point, they have total impunity.
Are farmers aware of the fact that they're using undocumented workers?
According to workers, they have confirmed that, yes.
So they do know. So you said now is the time to act. How can then the province of Ontario, even the federal government, how can they move in to help undocumented workers in this situation? Again, the fact is migrant workers are very important for this country's agri-food industry. So how can these workers be better protected?
We really need an integral solution to better protect workers, which includes labor mobility and flexible access to permanent residence for all migrant workers, and especially right now, food workers. Meaningful access to labor protections. Agricultural workers should be included in the Labor Relations Act, meaning access to joining a union without fear of repercussion. And
presumably
also,
that would help. And presumably that would help in something like a COVID-19 situation to actually protect them from dangerous work situations.
Yes, that's correct. Because in a unionized work environment, you will have Health and Safety Workers Committee working hand in hand with employers to make sure that workers have a safe work environment. And also part of the solution is that when it comes to testing, for instance, migrant workers have told us that they would like to be tested, but many don't have the possibility because the testing site closes at 8 p.m. And most migrant workers finish their long shifts at around 7 to 8 p.m. So they would like to see the testing facilities would open until at least 10 p.m. And in the case of migrant farm workers and agricultural workers in general, they cannot take time off as they don't have sick days nor get permission to go and be tested. Mm-hmm. Also, we have learned that migrant workers who had to be in quarantine for 2 to 3 weeks haven't been paid through WSIB as they should be. For workers coming under the temporary forest workers program, they do have access to these protections. And we are assisting migrant workers to obtain WSIB and serve emergency benefit, as their employers have not assisted them in the process.
Okay, Santiago, thank you for this. Sorry that we've run out of time, but this only really just adds to the conversation that we're beginning today. So thank you for this. That is Santiago Escobar, National Representative with the United Food and Commercial Workers Union and a coordinator at Agricultural Workers Alliance.